The A-List Podcast is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Thank you all for tuning into the A-List Podcast, already starting off on a goofy note. First off, the preseason schedule is out. The Celtics are, you could probably find this online, but quickly I'll go through it. Philadelphia, New York, Philly, New York, at Charlotte. That's the Celtics preseason in a nutshell. Sherrod Blakely, Gary Washburn. We're here to talk about the Celtics, as we usually do. Look at. Are you guys going to say anything? I've just been rambling for like 30 seconds at this point.
You're right, Kwani. You have been rambling. You're
right. We're here to talk about the Celtics.
Breaking news here. This podcast is very Celtics.
What was to say?
Is Kwani still on vacay, Gary?
Yeah. Kwani's like mentally at the Cape
in Birmingham. That's not vacation.
Martha's Vineyard, or fancy place. Me and Gary can't get in spots like that.
No, we can't.
Don't do that. But I'll take it. All right, let's talk about actually quickly. I am special. You guys aren't. One day though. One day. Hall of Fame weekend though. That's what we're focused on. Yeah. It's Celtics list though. That's the one thing we did want to highlight, considering this franchise, the history behind the Celtics. Who stands out to you? Let's start with that. The class that is getting inducted this weekend. Who do you think just stands out overall the most? You probably this was a setup for someone we know too, I guess.
Well, you look at the class. I think you got to look at Greg Popovich as the one guy who, you look at the impact that he's made on just his particular role as an NBA head coach. It's just phenomenal. You look at the way they were able to transition from one great, once in a lifetime type of player with David Robinson to another one in Tim Duncan, and to still, be relevant for a number of years afterwards. Obviously, they've hit a bit of a lull the last 4 or 5 years, but Greg Popovich is one of the all-time great coaches, and it's good to see him finally get his flowers and be among the all-time great coaches. Because when you look at if you were to put together like a Mount Rushmore of NBA head coaches, I think it's hard not to think about Greg Popovich as being one of those on that force.
Wow. It's a loaded class with
it is
Paul Gasol and Dwayne Wade and Tony Parker, Dirk Nowitzki, Greg Popovich, Gene Katie, the Purdue coach. So it's a loaded class. I guess Dirk probably stands out because of just the international, like he set the tone for the international kind of revival in the late 90s coming over and now. And then if you look at the drafts after Dirk in 98, there was just littered with international players, and there was kind of like a invasion in a sense, like the Beatles invasion, where and then if you look at the Beatles in the mid 60s, there was, 20 new groups from England that were hitting, there was all these knockoffs. And the same thing with Dirk. There were all these Dirk knockoffs, Nikolai Chavitsky, and there were all these Euro guys who never really quite made it. But Dirk was the first. He was the one that kind of started the international explosion of players. And to see him 20 years with the Mavericks winning a championship, just obviously revolutionizing the game for the four-man, kind of one of the first of the generation of finesse fours. If you want to include like Garnett in there, you can, but I think Garnett was a little bit more physical, a little bit more of a force in the paint. But Dirk was the guy who was going to take you outside, hit that one-footed step back jumper, hit the three, attack the rim. Like he was all around, and it kind of revolutionized the game, for power forwards now. Power forwards now play like Dirk Nowitzki as opposed to playing like Rick Mahorn or some of these guys of the older generation who were just big behemoths and rebounders and guys clearing out space. So I think of Dirk Nowitzki. Obviously, we can talk about, it's going to be a Miami Heat love fest with Dwayne Wade there, and I'm sure LeBron is going to be there. It's going to be a star-studded Hall of Fame with all the guys that are going to be in. They're going to check out all the Spurs folks that are going to be seeing, Tony Parker get in addition to Pop. All the Lakers, and still kind of the ghost of Kobe, with Gasol getting in, one of his closest friends and team. It's going to be an emotional weekend, but this is always fun. And I'm glad that the Hall, where it was not like the opening of the NFL season, it was like no overshadowed, nothing where I think last year and the year before, it was like, the opening of the NFL season, it kind of overtook it a little bit. This time, all on its own.
That was your hood history lesson with Gary Washburn. But what we were highlighting earlier and the tying back the point is the fact that this is a Hall of Fame class with no former Cs that are getting inducted. So from your two perspectives, do you think it's a fluke or a beginning of the Boston representation when you think about Hall of Fame contenders?
This is the beginning of the drought. This is the beginning of the drought for Celtics fans, because when you think about Hall of Famers at this point in time, you got to think about players from the 90s to 2000 to 2010s. And you go back to the 90s, and this is courtesy of Gary Washburn, but stats. 7 of the 10 years within the 90s, the Celtics didn't even make the damn playoffs. So very few players are coming from that era. J.R. Brimmer is not going to be a Hall of Famer. Greg Steensma is not going to be a Hall of Famer. So you can just pretty much forget about the 90s. And the 2000s were better, but not that much better. I mean, they got the championship in 2008, but that decade, I think, is going to be remembered more, not so much for what they accomplished, but what they could have accomplished. When you think about Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and Ray Allen coming away with one chip, when that group really should have probably had at least one or two others. So that group, again, those guys that I just mentioned, they're already in the Hall of Fame. So that decade is pretty much already accounted for. And if you look at the 2010s, some good players, but again, it's still relatively young, and that group still hasn't won a championship. And as we all know, the fastest way to being a Hall of Famer is to win championships.
Yeah.
I don't think Tony Parker would be a Hall of Famer. Well, I don't think, Manu Ginobili would necessarily be a champion in that same regard, and Dirk for that matter. I take that back about Dirk. Dirk would probably be in regardless. But the point is, you have to have team success in order, I think, to have that individual glory that comes with being a Hall of Famer. And beyond that, it's just not enough time. There hasn't been enough time for Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, etc. But there's some other couple of possibles, and we may get into that a little bit today, that might get in. But for the most part, you're not going to see those years where 8, 9 people get in and 3 or 4 of them are Celtics. Those days are long.
Football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. I wonder how many people are going to bet on the Patriots. You can use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sports book. That's FanDuel.com/Boston.
Gary, what do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be a drought. I mean, until the fact is that what you had was you had the Celtics rely on veterans for a long time in the big three in terms of Garnett, Pierce, and Allen. And then in 12, 13, so 10, 11 years ago, those guys all left, were traded. Allen signed with Miami. And so all those guys end up retiring and, getting into the Hall of Fame eventually with Pierce and with, all those guys. So now you have this gap, right? And you just have, they went completely young. So to me, it's just not going to be, it's going to be a while because you don't have any real veterans. Like, Marcus Smart was kind of the first of the new generation. Marcus is now gone. Poor
and no shade, but he's not going to be in the Hall of Fame.
No, so. But so you got
all
Jason.
Due respect, Kwani. With all due
respectfully,
you got Jason and Jalen.
I'll be in what 10, 15 years, 20 years.
Jason's 25, and Jalen's 26. So that's going to be a while. So you don't have any like 34, 30. You don't have any cusp Hall of Famers. You don't have any guys. It's just going to be a while before you have. You might have a player who might have had a cup of coffee with the Celtics, something like that. Get in, but not what you would say a true original Celtic. I don't think that's going to happen for a while. But when you kind of go young and you go old for a long time, remember, like they signed the Big Three in 2007. It was supposed to be a 3-year plan, ended up going pretty much 6. And then they did a complete rebuild where Doc left and Ray ended up leaving. And Paul and Kevin went to Brooklyn, got traded to Brooklyn for all those draft picks. The Celtics just started over. So there's who are we talking about here? There was no heir apparent to Kevin, Paul, and Ray. So it's just going to be a long gap before you see one of your favorite Celtics in the Hall of Fame. And I'm talking about like, 10, 12 years, because unless you're talking about somebody who might have, had a cup of coffee with the Celtics, spent a year with them. And I really can't think of anybody like right now off the top of my head, but like a true Celtic, a drafted, or someone who played 7, 8 years in Boston. That ain't happening for a while.
Let's play a game then of who's got next. I'll say a Celtics player, former player or executive's name, and you tell me whether or not that person is definitely in, definitely out, or try again later. We'll circle back with them. So first one is Reggie Lewis. Don't go silent on me now. Are you good?
I thought Gary was going to go first just because Gary's done a lot of. Reggie's a little bit better than I do. Plus, you're older and closer to him in age.
Not older. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's a tough situation. And still a kind of a controversial situation of whose fault was it. And, there was a lot. There was a lot that went on there. And obviously, he was kind of, he perished in the middle of his career. So I don't think there would be a long time happening, just considering the fact, although a great college player at Northeastern, but still the controversy that surrounds his passing, passing in the middle of his career, and the Celtics unfortunately went to the dumps as a team and as a franchise for about almost a decade after his tragic passing. But no, I just don't see that for Reggie Lewis. As much as I think it would be amazing, and remember the thing that we don't recall, because I remember having this discussion with Cedric Maxwell about Dino Radja, and he was just like, how the hell Dino Radja made the Hall of Fame? What the hell is going on here? This is not the NBA Hall of Fame. This is the Naismith Hall of Fame. So college is taken into account, high school is taken into account, international competition. So you see great international players that didn't have great NBA careers like Dino Radja, but the guys were Dino was part of, like the Yugoslavia, great resurgent Yugoslavia team. And or you look at like Manu Ginobili, people are like, well, he wasn't a real Hall of Famer. He was a good player for the Spurs, but remember, like, he was on that team that beat the US in 2004, and was a great international player. So international is taken into account. High school and college is taken into account. So you look at some of the people that have gotten in, and you take all encompassing. So a guy like Dino Radja and Max looking at me like, well, shoot, why am I getting a call? Where's my Hall of Fame check? When I'm getting that call? when I'm heading Springfield, when I'm getting my limo, it was like they take into account, and Max, he sure hell said that.
Oh, I know him. Yep, I know. I heard him say it as you were saying it too.
But they take into account. I think people have to understand it's a Naismith Hall of Fame, so it's all encompassing basketball. High school, if you had a great high school career, that might help your resume. I remember, Mitch Richmond. People were like, "Well, he's a borderline," but Mitch Richmond led Kansas State to the Elite Eight. And they hadn't been there in decades. Like that's another chip on your, resume, is what you did in college. So, if you want to, like someone like a Reggie Lewis might help him, or being on a great high school team at DeMatha. If you look at that, there's been books written about the team with Muggsy Bogues, Reggie Williams, the great Reggie Williams, who, was just a beast at Georgetown. Sherrod hell remembers that, him busting up on his Syracuse team over the years. He remembers that. Reggie was real. I mean, and you could maybe include that too. But
these are your hiring goals, they say. They're very aggressive, but when everyone looks to you, you're calm. Why? Because you don't need a miracle, you need Indeed. Indeed is a hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. They streamline hiring with powerful tools that can help you find your matched candidates. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed match their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Candidates you invite to apply are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in the search. Indeed does the hard work for you, and they show you candidates whose resume, once again, on Indeed, fit the job description immediately after you post so that you can hire faster. Even better, Indeed's the only job site where you only pay for applications that meet your must-have requirements. Indeed is an unbelievably powerful hiring platform, delivering 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to CLNS in 2019. You can start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/A-list. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit right now at Indeed.com/A-list. Once again, Indeed.com/A-list, and show that support by saying you heard this on podcast. Indeed.com/A-list. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
It's just the Hall of Fame is difficult. Like it encompasses everything. So people can't just say, "Oh, he wasn't great in the NBA." But you look at the internet, how many gold medals did he win? Did he lead his team? Something like that. And like as I said, like Manu Ginobili, who's going to be there honoring bringing in Tony Parker, and people, well, Ginobili was good, but remember, Argentina won that gold in 2004. That was historic. If you guys remember, I know it's 19 years ago now, but the that U.S. team in 2004 was a mess, and they end up slipping and losing in the quarters. Sorry, in the semifinals, and winning a bronze. And we can't imagine that now, because with Kobe and all those guys, the Redeem team and LeBron, all these guys, they haven't lost since. But in those days, that was a shocker.
Yeah. All right. So no to that one. Sherrod, did you want to chime in already?
I would just be reiterating a lot of the stuff that Gary said. Yeah. Bottom line is
everything made sense.
That made a lot of sense. And, good player, but there's a body of work that goes beyond just what you did in the NBA. I think Reggie, highly unlikely, but if they start factoring in what he meant to Northeastern in college basketball, all-time leading scorer in school history, and I think also what happened when he was not a Celtic, as Gary pointed out, they sucked for a long time after he left, which I think that says as much about his impact as what he did as a player. So I think he has a very, very slim shot, but I agree with Gary. It's highly unlikely that we'll see him in the Hall.
Next on the list, Danny Ainge. I'm saying yes.
I'm all for it. Danny, you look as a player, no, because his body work is good, but as an executive, I think he has.
Damn, tell us how you feel, Sherrod.
Look.
Hell no.
At least I'm not coming at
Are you crazy?
Oh my gosh.
Sherrod.
He said no.
Cut that out.
No, as a player, not happening. As an executive, I think he's got a shot. I mean, he's won a championship. He built the Celtics into being a perennial contender for decades, where they were at. They'd have moments here and there, but Danny laid the foundation for what this team is today, and that is a team that year in, year out is in the hunt to win a championship. And you're not going to win a championship if you're not a contender for one at least. And Danny's had a lot to do with that. So yeah, and if he can do some things in Utah, get them, in the next year or two to where they're maybe top 3, top 4
solidified
in the West, that only strengthens the case for him as being a potential Hall of Famer getting in as executive.
Agree.
Yeah, I think he can get in as an executive or a contributor. Remember our friend Sat Sanders was inducted as a contributor, right? So that's a category that will be interesting. And remember too, the 24 class is real thin, I'll say. Yep. Okay, Vince Carter and Jamal Crawford, is about the two that probably first ballot Hall of Famers. Other than that, you're probably going to get a lot of guys like guys overdue to me is Chauncey Billups. He could be up for it. Sherrod's boy from the D. Let's hope a friend, someone I have met and talked to and got to know over the years is Marcus Johnson. Wooden Player of the Year at UCLA, Crenshaw High School. So that's LA to me. Like my uncle, who died 2 weeks before I was born, was the first student body president at Crenshaw High School, and Marcus helped turn that school into a complete basketball power for 30 years. Crenshaw, LA, about Crenshaw. They used to play my high school, and we would all run go to the other side of the court to watch Crenshaw warm up, because that's when you couldn't dunk in warm-ups. So it was like the Harlem Globetrotters came to town. Like they might as well play Sweet Georgia Brown when Crenshaw came to your school, because it was dudes that were like 12 dudes, 15 players, 12, 13 were Division I guys, and they should have came out to Sweet Georgia Brown in those days, and they would just do and then they would just drop the ball in the basket. Like they couldn't dunk, but they would get like high, like the rim would be right here. And so everybody like this, and it's the warm-ups, right? So Marcus Johnson started that, and so I'm rooting for Marcus Johnson. Hopefully, it's his time next year. He's fallen short a little bit. So next year's class will be interesting. And it could include maybe a guy who's a former Celtic or two. We'll see. But next year's class is kind of thin. This year's class is loaded. It's just
it's superstars.
Yeah, D-Wade, Nowitzki, Paul Gasol, Tony Parker. Then Pop decides, if you guys don't know, Pop could have got people like, whoa, why is Pop in? So Pop didn't want to get in. He told the Hall of Fame, do not vote for me. Do not put me on the ballot until all of my guys are in. So he waited for Duncan to get in, Ginobili, Parker, now. And then I think Jerry Colangelo, kind of the Hall of Fame president, was like, Pop, you just,
it
this is ridiculous
sense.
now.
Yeah.
You make, you're tripping. You got it. So he finally decided when his last guy, Parker, is up, that he's getting inducted. So it'll be interesting, special night for the Spurs, obviously with Parker and Coach Pop getting inducted, but hopefully some guys who have been like Chauncey Billups, I think, who have been overlooked will get in because this is just one of those current classes that is not all that strong in 24.
Yeah. All right, final person, Doc Rivers.
Count it.
Could be spicy. Count it.
Count it.
Lock it in.
He's
really
confidently.
It's not
going to be debatable. He's one of the top 10 winningest coaches all time. That's going to get him in. He's got a championship. check that box. Now, when he has 3-2 series leads, things don't really go on like grade 4.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you look at his total wins, you look at the fact he's got a championship, that's going to get him in. To me, Doc is a no-brainer. It's not a question of if but when. Is he going to be a first ballot? Is he going to get on the first ballot? And I don't think he will, but Doc will eventually be in the Hall of Fame. I have absolutely zero doubts about that.
Book it. Gary.
Yeah,
book it. Yeah, it's booked.
Yeah, just his overall impact on the game.
That's a good point. Yeah,
and the fact that been in several championships, and as I said, I think the biggest regret, and I'll just say this for Celtic fans, like that 2010. I mean, and I said that was Kobe's greatness in Game 7 when he was 6 for 24 from the field, but he ended up getting to the free throw line, and then the Celtics got kind of tired. Like that whole, if they win that series and they get 2 chips in 3 years, everything, the perception of the Celtics and the big 3 changes because you got 2 championships. And then remember, the year before, Garnett got hurt, so they got eliminated by Orlando because Garnett wasn't 100%. So, and then if you recall, and I know it's 13 years ago now, but Perk tore his ACL in Game 6. And that affected everything. But they had a chance to win Game 7. That's a 30 for 30, that Game 7, where they played so well the first 3 quarters and then got tired. I remember Rasheed just asking out. I mean, Rasheed, and we all know Rasheed wasn't in the greatest shape during his time with the Celtics or whatever, but he tapped out of that game. But that's just, if they win that Game 7, and now and that adds to Kobe's resume. Kobe bringing it home, so that's on Kobe. So it's all-time great Kobe moment. But man, I'm sure the big 3, whenever they get together, I don't care if Ray's there or not, I'm sure they lament losing that Game 7 because that changes the whole image of the big 3. When you win 2 chips instead of 1, that's amazing. So Doc definitely gets in, but I'm sure he laments and thinks about that every day. I think there's I think Pop, because obviously Miami came back in 2013 and beat the Spurs in 7. That incredible shot by Ray Allen and all that. And
there'll be jokes made in the speeches about that.
Pop asked Doc, like, how long does it take to get over a Game 7 loss? And Doc says, you don't. It's just something you wear it like a scarlet letter, like you wear it forever. So if you're Doc and the Celtics, they regret that 2010. I still think about that, just them kind of giving away Game 6. People don't really talk about the Game 6. I think they scored 67 points in that Game 6. They just handed it to the Lakers. They had 2 to win 1. So, but Doc, considering his impact on the game, yes, he is a lock to get into the Hall of Fame.
Well, there you have it. We have more that we can talk about, but I think we can save this for next week. I will mention, though, the reports that Kristaps Porzingis will miss the FIBA World Cup in the start of the NBA season as well with a foot injury, and then O'Shea Brissett will reportedly be rehabbing his knee instead of playing for Team Canada. So next week, I think we can go into a little more depth about what effects this will have on the Celtics starting off the season. But I think this was a good Hall of Fame recap episode. Really like that game. Shout out to Sherrod for getting that one out. But until next week, this is the A-List Podcast. I'm Kwani Lunis, Sherrod Blakely, Gary Washburn. We appreciate you listening. And as always, we'll be back next week. So stick around.
Sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston and make every moment more on America's #1 sportsbook.